Right now, you are living through the birth and rapid evolution of a new kind of intelligence, AI.
Rival tech luminaries who have already reshaped our world are in an arms race. Recent polls suggest 70 to 90% of all CEOs plan to invest heavily in AI behind them.
The numbers are staggering, amounting to hundreds of billions of dollars in the next few years. Governments and regulators are stepping in as well, setting the stage for a global paradigm shift.
But have you stopped to understand what AI really is? Are you prepared for a world where AI will impact your job, your health, your relationships, and maybe even the nature of your humanity?
I'm Charlie Stack.
I am Lax Srinivasan. We believe your success, our success, depends on us starting to have a different set of conversations about AI.
Join us as we get to know our new neighbor. Welcome to the machine. I don't know about you, but when the topic of AI comes up in a large enough group of my friends, someone inevitably makes a joke about how it's going to take all of our jobs. People who know very little about AI and how it works at least seem to know one thing. It has the potential to replace a lot of what humans currently do. The IMF says 60% of jobs in countries like the US will be impacted. World Economic Forum says 30% of the global workforce will lose their jobs to AI. Pew Research says almost 20% of Americans are in jobs that are immediately threatened. Nobody has a crystal ball, but it seems like everyone agrees AI is coming for our jobs. Many of our other episodes will focus on the question of how human work will evolve and what are the new jobs that AI, like other technologies, will create. But today, we're going to focus on something else entirely: the role that AI might play and is already playing in deciding what job you should have or what job you are even qualified for. As the job market has moved online to forums like LinkedIn, Monster, or Indeed, algorithms that sift through resumes and assess candidates have already subtly started to reshape hiring practices. I love this topic because it isn't just about automating HR processes. It raises critical questions about bias, ethics, and the balance between efficiency and human judgment. Joining us today to help investigate this topic are two absolute experts in the field of digitally assisted hiring and performance assessment: IO psychologist Charles Handler and my good friend and Spencer Stuart colleague, Meng Li. Charles is the president and founder of Rocket Hire, a pioneering talent assessment firm that leverages scientific practices and cutting-edge technology to streamline recruitment processes and create smarter, more compliant, and effective hiring solutions. Charles is an expert in assessing human performance. He's also deeply engaged with AI and its potential and risks. He also hosts a great podcast that you should check out called Psych Tech at Work, where he discusses the latest advancements and trends in hiring assessments and workplace psychology. Meng is a Spencer Stuart consultant who focuses on leadership assessment and development. Her contributions to leadership development have made her a respected voice in the industry. She creates and facilitates engaging leadership training modules and workshops. She's taught in Ohio State University's MBA program, and she's authored over 80 articles, research reports, and white papers. She also happens to focus specifically on the changes taking place around digital transformation. Meng and Charles, welcome to the machine. It's great to have you both on today. As we dive in, I'm curious to know how both of you got into doing the work that you do today.
Sure. I'll go ahead here. I am an interesting product of my father is a was a PhD clinical psychologist who specialized in assessment for personality, especially using projective tests like the Rorschach. And my mom's a PhD computer scientist, so I kind of got the the interesting combination in my brain of knowing how to understand people and measure people, and then understanding more of the technology and kind of analytical programmatic side of it. And so those are the two things that go along in my brain. I honestly found I was pre-med, I was pre-med in college, and it was hard. And I found I started taking these psychology classes, and I didn't have to study, and I was getting straight A's. So I thought maybe I got a knack for this. Uh, and also really love business and commerce, and found that IO psychology is a really good blend of all of those things. And I've had a very interesting journey in my career, which I won't go into, but it in detail, but it's led me to understand the foundational elements of good measurement of things about people and what those mean for job and organizational performance. And I'm just a huge lover of technology. I see the potential it has to do good and the risk that it has, and managing that is a lot of fun as well. It's just so interesting. So I've melded those two things together, and now is a really happy time to be in this field, because it's so revolutionary in my mind. I don't feel like it's hyperbole for me to say that.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, given your background, an algorithm could have almost predicted that you would end up focused where you did.
Maybe not. Who knows?
Man, what about you?
Yes, so for me, as an introvert, I actually have an inner love for people. I love interacting with people. I love listening to their stories. So going to college, it's naturally, I just look at human resource management, even though I don't know what it does, but there's a human in there. So I picked that as my major. And after 4 years of human resource management study, I realized I always study a lot of laws and labor laws, employment laws, and the administrative side of working with human. And I do want to explore the other side, what it is like to really help people do their job better, what it takes to help organizations to be more effectively enabling their people. And I really accidentally stumbled into the field of industrial and organizational psychology, and got into a PhD program. And the more I learn, the more I realize that actually one of the expert on our program advisor, he studies job stress, work stress, stress at work. And we realize that leaders, they are a major source of stressor in the workplace. And
Really?
effective leadership behaviors are just, it looks so apparent, but then you look at the workplace, a lot of people, they are not adopting those behaviors that to help employees to do the best of their job. They're not taking care of their people, and they're not enabling the organization to create the best level of performance or productivity. So kind of just get into my study, slowly turned to the side of study of leaders. And after I graduated, I got an opportunity at Ohio State University and in the Fisher Leadership Initiative, where we really dive into leadership research. And there we work with the world leading leadership researchers, and really studied a lot of the leadership behaviors, outcomes, and really trying to elevate our students, their leadership capability there, and then transition my role in Spencer Stuart. And so now my major role is to assess leaders and help develop leaders. So not as interesting journey as Charles, but definitely driven by my own interest in what makes successful leaders in the workplace.
Yeah.
So you're both spending a lot of time, from different angles, thinking about, for to be very generic about it, what makes people successful in the jobs that they do. Let's bring AI into the conversation. How's AI transforming the way that work gets done?
Yeah, I think that it's really all about signal, right? It's about being able to take an individual person and get a signal that's credible and clear about their capabilities for performing specific job duties, or even performing within an organization effectively. And it doesn't matter what tools you're using. I mean, that's the end goal. And there's a lot of friction in that process, especially at the less at the leadership level, I think, and more at the higher volume where I think most of the hiring, tends to happen. Leadership, you get a lot more one-on-one conversations. The volume is lower. It doesn't mean that AI is not going to be used there, but you see a lot more of the application of these tools to try and get signal at scale to help organizations sift through the giant tsunami of job applicants they're getting, right? And uh, I was working early in the 2000s, working at one of the first assessment companies that put assessments online. And back then, it was all about, hey, we've got job boards. We never had those, and all of a sudden, we had no ATS. We had nothing on the other side, that's applicant tracking system, to receive the massive deluge of information we're getting, and it caused a lot of problems. So the industry reacted to create these systems and processes to help process all that information. But the signal is really crappy, and it's really hard to be able to interpret that. So everybody's looking for an advantage there, and there's really a two-way street with AI in this realm, because there are a lot of tools now that allow people to apply for thousands of jobs with one click of a button, or to actually take an interview. I saw one the other day. It'll actually sit there and co-pilot you while you're on your job interview, listen to the actual voice track coming over the airwaves and tell you what to say right there. And there's other tools you can buy that are resume optimators that are like, we're going to get you 100 connections if you pay this much money. And you start seeing that, and poor employers are having a difficult time, be even harder to get a signal. So everybody's looking for that signal, especially at scale. I'm not going to say right now that I think AI is doing a better job, but we're just searching for something that can help relieve this friction and help companies get the right people in the seat.
What is good signal?
Yeah, good signal. That's a good question. Good signal is clarity about the individual differences that this person possesses in a credible, reliable, fair, and accurate way, right? So we're measuring things about people, and ostensibly we understand the things about people that are required on the job to be effective, and we're matching those two things, right? So the signal is, I'm Charles Handler. I have these skills and abilities, and I'm going to then, push those to you. And if your job really needs those same skills and abilities, were lined up really well, then I should be moving forward in the process.
So it's a formal assessment. Is it, looking at your social media profile? Is it, if you're an employee at my company, is it tracking all of your clicks and mouse strokes and keystrokes as you do your
Well,
job?
yeah, there's a lot of that stuff, right? I feel like there's a wide range of things, but what I feel like the issue with the AI, the pure algorithmic stuff that has no psychology and no measurement in it, it's purely empirical. It's just, I don't think it works. I'll just be honest. I think we're far. I think it has potential, but right now the type of, they call talent intelligence things, where you're scraping all kinds of digital exhaust. LinkedIn is obviously the number one thing. Resumes are thrown into the mix, and it also depends on if you're sourcing. So there are sourcing tools that say, hey, we're going to go out and find the people. They don't even have to be job applicants yet. We're going to go scrape the web. We're going to bring you back a bunch of people that are ostensibly qualified, and then you can put them in your hiring funnel. So there's those, but there's also tools that scan resumes and try to pull meaning out of a resume in some predictive measurement oriented way. I talk to a lot of people who do what I do at large enterprise companies who've trialed these things. Not one of them has ever said, "Oh, that worked so well for us." Most of them say, "We tried that and we stopped." But a lot of people who are adopting these things are not IO psychologists. They're business leaders and talent acquisition leaders who have to put butts in seats and find that signal. So they're looking for any advantage. They don't always know how to evaluate the quality of what's going on. And AI has a mystery to it. We don't always know. We don't know where it comes from or what's going on in that black box a lot of times. So it's sometimes difficult for us to say, it's not going to work. So
So,
we have
so
to get,
Charles,
yeah, go ahead.
so
Go ahead.
Charles, somebody I knew in a prior life used to say the best day for the employee and the employer is the first day employee joins the company, right?
Uh-huh.
It's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
So my question is, I mean, it sounds like, is this kind of a solution chasing a problem, at least in the domain of, on the intake side of talent acquisition? I mean, what
Well,
problem are we trying to solve here? I mean,
yeah,
this
yeah,
is like saying I want to pick a stock. I want to signal to make $1 million,
yeah,
in stock market. Yeah, great
yeah,
problem. But is
sure.
this really a problem AI can address? So what are your thoughts on that? The signal, is it
Yeah.
all noise?
Well, so one of the first things I always say is AI is not a solution in itself. You need to have something else. AI is a component to a solution, right? So, um, just throwing AI at something is not always going to be the ideal way to go. I do think the problem is just understanding an individual. So stocks, there's a certain amount of just complete unknown what's going to happen. Something horrible could happen in the world tomorrow and the markets go down, and you can't predict that. It is at least a little better with people because you can measure immutable things or things that are malleable, but traits and knowledges. If you need someone who's a expert in cold fusion or Python, you can give them a test or an assessment or look at what they've done. That's very kind of surface level thing. When it gets to soft skills, it's a little harder, but these things are a little bit more quantifiable, at least. The other interesting thing, though, that I'll say is, when we look as IO psychologists and we're doing what we call validation studies, and we're looking at the relationship between a predictor, often a test, but now predictors can be any signal in my mind, and outcomes on the job. If we're predicting at 25% accuracy, we're absolute heroes. They're going to put a crown on us and say, you are doing an amazing job. The good news is at scale, 25% accuracy is millions and millions of dollars. But it's hard for people to wrap their heads around the fact that predicting what people are going to do on a job is really hard. I could be the best fit in the world for the job and I decide not to show up, or my wife has to move to another place and I have to quit to go there. So many contingencies.
Meng, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and Lex, just to answer your questions about the problems we're trying to solve. And Charles mentioned AI is just a tool. And for this tool, like at least from my perspective, leadership assessment development, what we are looking for firstly is efficiency. So it can help us to streamline some of the administrative tasks. And we already see some great tools out there to facilitating us with these administrative tools. So like note-taking bots and automatic schedulings for the process. And also there are some other tools, like Charles mentioned, sourcing candidates and help us to provide summaries of their resumes and to make easier for us to access the talents and the qualities that we want. And there's consistency because we all acknowledge that there's human errors and human biases. And with the tool, our hope is that with the tool, with the cold computer, cold algorithm, it will free us of all the biases and give us objective, fair judgments of people's qualities and their performance. And it helps data-driven decisions because I used to work at a company provides large-scale assessments to big corporations. So often thousands of assessments delivered all the time. And in the background, that's many, many years ago. A lot of time spent on analyzing the data and make sure it's free of bias and also make sure they predict job assessments. That's a lot of work and a lot of human work. And AI can really help us to streamline the process, analyze the data, and spit out the results and present to us in a user-friendly way. If that happens, it would be amazing and a great assistance for us doing our job as well. And also, just technology, I really don't think it's gonna replace us in the any short terms, but I do feel that especially when it comes to leadership assessment, like Charles said, it's more one-on-one, especially with the executives in the organization. And AI really helps us to relieve us of those mundane
Yeah.
tasks, that small details that prone to human error, and give us a lot of opportunity to really provide that high touch experience that our clients and candidates are expecting. And
So
Alexa, like I said, the good relationships start from day one. I think it's actually, it really starts from the hiring process. And there's research shows that candidates' impression throughout the hiring process also relates to their impression of the company overall. So I'm
Meng,
kind of very
if
excited.
I'm if I'm paraphrasing you, this rhymes with so many other domains, which is that immediately, the best use cases for AI in hiring people are really about reducing the administrative overhead related to hiring people. No surprises there. I think we could look at almost any domain and say that lots of what's happening is just automating the mundane stuff that takes lots of the time in a process. Um, but you did wade into something that I want to dive deeper on, which is this notion of bias. And I think this is a really interesting thing to examine, because I think a lot of times when we talk about AI, we sort of think about introducing bias, right? When you're using an algorithm to evaluate something, that algorithm is biased by the information that it has available to it, and it can never have complete information. So, the algorithms that they were trying to use to, create sentencing guidelines for criminals turned out to be very biased against certain groups for a bunch of obvious reasons related to the data sets that they were using to train them. You're talking about actually using AI to reduce bias. Let's dive in there for a second, and I want to hear from both of you on this. Like, how does AI help me be less biased in terms of making a hiring decision?
Uh, that's a really good question. The AI creates a lot of paradoxes, and those paradoxes put pressure on us. So if you think about one of those paradoxes to me is you have a lot of people saying AI can be very biased, and other people saying, well, we can use AI to help us make objective decisions. And I think they're both right, but AI is only good. It's not super intelligent. It only knows what we teach it and we train it. So when we train it with our biases, it's going to be biased. If we can figure out how to train it without bias, then that's what we need, to be really focusing on. I wish I had that answer. I'd be a billionaire. I don't have that answer fully right now, but I think it has a good and a bad side. I feel like, um, in the higher volume stuff I've been talking about, I think one of the issues that you get into, if you talk about these signal collection or signal, receiving generating systems, um, is is the fact that recruiters, a lot of these systems are what we call recommendation engines. Even above that, they often control algorithms who sees a job advertisement. And if you think about hiring as a funnel, and it's just a probability numbers game, if you're not putting plaid people into your hiring funnel, you're never going to hire plaid people. So if your job ads are not getting seen by plaid people because an algorithm says, well, those plaid people would never have a computer science degree and a programming job, so we're not even going to show them that ad. So all of a sudden you're predisposing yourself to problems. And then the next level would be, okay, I'm a recruiter and I get to thumbs up and thumbs down people coming in, more like them, more like that. The system then learns that and says, okay, I'm only going to start delivering these kind of people to that individual. That's where you start to really stack the odds against you in the hiring funnel. So a good, quality assessment that we know, as Meng mentioned, is not biased because we've done the adverse impact work, et cetera, can be a pretty good way to say, all right, once we get a hold of this person, we can give them a relatively unbiased, way to be evaluated. We still have individual hiring manager decisions after that. It compounds itself down the funnel. It's hard to control. Uh, but I do believe I have high hopes that we can learn to train AI to not do that. Right now, I think it's a problem.
Yeah, I agree. And I am also confident to leverage our knowledge as IO psychologists to help design the tools that are free of bias. And, to be free of bias, it has to be job relevant, relevant to the requirements of the job. And we do job analysis, we do validation studies to make sure the tools that we use is directly related to key competency skills, knowledge that required for the job. And also, like Charles said, we do adverse impact analysis. So we do all sorts of bias analysis against assessment tools and to make sure that the tools is free of bias. And AI just can help us to do it even faster because normally what we do is after a batch of assessment and we have people go in to do the analysis and then we look at the indexes to decide if the tool is free of bias. AI can monitor it in real time and give us the calculation whenever you want to take a look. And it's going to help us to catch these biased tools at its early stage. So it's just a very exciting opportunity there as well.
Yeah, I think Charlie, from a purely AI perspective, bias is actually least of the problems. Because bias is very obvious, right? You can look at it and say certain groups are disproportionately advantaged or disadvantaged. And I used to work for FICO scores, consumer credit, and people who know, they know how to handle that. I think I think where algorithm in general could help is humans are very noisy. And Charles, you may know Professor Daniel Kahneman, right, who recently passed
I do.
away.
Yes.
And I mean, he had this thing called, there are two systems: think fast, think slow. One is automatic, 2 plus 2, you don't think, it comes up. If you're taking a left turn in a traffic, you think,
Yep.
right?
Hmm.
Effortful activities. I think he talks, his latest book before he passed away is called Noise. He talks about same, let's say, same assessment, the candidate given to the same recruiter or the manager on 2 different days as 2 different answers. Or you have a bank of recruiters in a company that one can substitute for another. And if you get the same candidate and ask, let's say, 100 recruiters to judge, they'll all judge. There's a huge variance. Whereas if you have algorithm, the same information, if you have, once you form the algorithm, will give you the same answer a million times. Is that kind of, I mean, clearly personal productivity angle I see. The question is there a game changing aspect to AI when it comes to
Right.
talent
So
management?
what you just mentioned to me, what popped in my head immediately is it depends on the credibility of the signal. I mean, if you yes, if you have an AI delivering or reviewing resumes and making decisions, well, what's it looking at?
Mm-hmm.
And so what we do in assessment is we have kind of a rigorous approach where we psychometrically understand that a measure is actually measuring the trait about the person that's important. And I think that's really the opportunity for AI is to be able to do that for us. Right now, I don't think it can do the same thing as a well-crafted test. I think there's a lot of opportunity for that to happen. So I think the realm that we are enjoying success in right now is the minimizing the drudgery of doing these things,
Yeah.
helping co-pilot us. We can all agree that that's effective, and the risk level there is pretty low. So we're gaining a lot. But as we move into more of, well, let this thing replace humans as decision makers, whether it's firing machine guns in a defense situation, whether it's who you're going to hire, whether it's what medication to give somebody. There's a lot of high risk situations for it. Hiring is one of, the EUAI Act has hiring as the top level of allowable, potential for danger. So
And Meng, from what you have seen, is AI fully adopted? Do you think, let's just assume it's in that personal productivity space of automating tedious task, administrative task. What would you say is the adoption of AI in HR or in leadership development areas?
Yeah, I actually looked at some data before our talk, and it seems like probably 30% of organizations are truly embracing some sort of AI practice and only use it for a quarter or less of their processes. So there's still a
Mm.
lot of human involvement in there because, especially in the leadership assessment space, a lot of times it's also human interaction as well. We want to be there to calm our participants down and to explain to them the purpose of the assessment and to make sure we build that interpersonal connection before we dive right into these questions to assess their capabilities. And then later on, we get to connect again to talk about the assessment results and how we can help them to improve their capabilities. As you can see, there's a lot of human touch in there that you just cannot replace. But I think AI just help us to provide quality work faster, a lot faster these days. It take 2 months to write a really great leadership report before, and now you can do it in a few days with the help of the editing and the level of language capabilities that are provided by a large language model. Or you can create a really great quality of interview questions or behavioral evaluation criteria. And it's not like we actually had to create it and we just use it. And we as human, we can build on top of that and use our creativity to really upgrade what we have AI has drafted for us. So yeah.
I'm curious, you've gone into this a little bit, but I like this. I like this thinking about the layering of the different, tiers of problem that you're really trying to solve when you evaluate who might be a good fit, whether at a leadership level or at a, Charles, as you said, a Java developer or, level, or an entry level of a company. There are the sort of hard things you can evaluate. Does a person have skills? Maybe that's kind of like you can give them a reliable test and you can just know whether or not they're good at a task. You kind of glossed over this other thing, which I think probably encapsulates lots of different things, a softer area. And that's everything from the sort of Myers-Briggs tests or whatever that everybody's taken. What's your personal style? How do you show up? But also, really thinking about, culture, like what is the place that you're going to show up into? you know in my life as a recruiter, I mean, we say this sort of truism all the time that you could be the world's most successful CEO in company X and be an abysmal failure in company Y, even if those two companies do roughly the same thing, because the culture that gets built in an organization, if you're talking about AT&T or Verizon, right, is this completely unique thing that gets sort of created over time. I'm curious to hear both of you talk about the frontiers of some of that softer stuff and the specific ways in which machine intelligence algorithms can be used to help assist us in assessing for those softer things or assessing for fit. What does that landscape look like to you, and how do you think about the kind of different things that we really have to find answers to in that space?
Well, there's a lot. That was a lot of things to process in terms of
40,
being
yeah, for
able.
my classic 40-part
Yeah,
question. Sorry.
yeah, no. It's even just talking about culture. If you had just stopped at culture, it would be a lot. And probably not even enough time in this episode. It is harder to measure the soft skills, but I do think that AI, as Meng has said, it can help us build better measures. It can help us more quickly build measures to evaluate those things. So from a construction side, it's very useful. I still think we have a ways to go on the soft skills. Again, I think there's a real opportunity, uh, if we just focus on soft skills, for AI to actually help put people into job related scenarios and interact with them in terms of being a simulation or some form of way that it can elicit the things that would be important on the job from you, that are the behaviors that stem from the soft skills that you have. So I see a big, and my vision for the future is very heavily oriented toward AI-based simulations. Simulations are very expensive and difficult to create as in a bespoke way. And right now we're stuck with these avatars that nobody likes. But pretty soon we're going to have text to video that's hyper realistic. This could be a simulation, and we could be testing how well somebody, thinks about AI for a job at Spencer Stuart. So it's going to happen that way. And I believe we'll be able to build the scoring mechanisms and things into AI. So, you know,
Oh,
the more
oh,
complex the
Char
job, yeah,
oh, Charles,
you're getting
yeah.
lax worked up. You're getting lax
yeah,
worked up
Yeah,
talking
I'm
about
no,
pretty
you
pumped
you
here.
let
Yeah,
the cat out of the bag, Charles.
yeah.
Charlie, you didn't know this is actually a simulation you're in. We're interviewing
Uh-huh.
you for a podcast host job.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Well, the one thing I wanted to say, and then I'll shut up, is that scoring interactions and complex dynamics between people is very hard. In a leadership assessment, as Meng said, it takes a long time. An expert psychologist takes all these different pieces of data and knits them together. Um, AI can do a very good job of looking across a lot of data and summarizing that and coming to some conclusions that we can then let somebody else make the judgments about. But that complex scoring of these interactions, scenarios, lots of data, that's where we have a massive ability. And we can train it to do that. We can train it to do that in an unbiased way. So that's going to be the win, I think, for us.
Yeah, and I think AI can eventually help us to make assessment complex again. Because nowadays we use human assessors, humans' mental capacity is very limited. So we have to structure the assessment process in a way to the maximum capacity of the assessors that we have on board. So the data points we collect is limited. The assessment criteria we use is somewhat limited as well. If you heard about behavioral anchor rating scales, those are prescribed behaviors that we want to see in effective leaders. A lot of times people give answers that are just way beyond the scales, but then we have to make a judgment which category it will fit. So with the help of AI, we can process more and collect more data points and make assessment even more accurate. Like Charles said, 25% accuracy that makes us get a 0.5 correlation coefficient. That's like probably the best assessment tool you've ever seen. But I'm sure with the help of AI, with more data points together, you probably can increase that accuracy level to a whole new level. So that's pretty exciting to think about.
Yeah, and it looks like, I mean, on the assessment, and whether it's on the intake recruitment side or performance management side, it looks like the state of AI is really helping be kind of an assistant, kind of automating task. But I think, Charles, I know it's a whole another episode, but let's just cover this in the few minutes left. It looks like the hope you're leaving with, the game-changing nature, perhaps, is the ability for almost like a personal coach. The AI could be, Khan Amigo has great kind of examples of, the personal tutor,
Yeah.
right? Especially generative AI. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that's where potentially a lot of opportunities for companies and management, and whether it's leadership level or otherwise, are? Meaning, how do you do kind of training and upskilling, but using AI as a co-pilot along the journey?
Yeah, I see that as the number one use case right now that's starting to happen in our field is being able to give feedback. So the type of report Meng's talking about, there's often a feedback session, and I don't think you want to replace a person with that. But if that uh, person has an app or some way to get continual feedback based on the data, or even coaching as well, and there's not, excuse me, the issues with bias and things, they don't really come into play in those areas. So we're safe in those zones. We're not making decisions about people. We're helping people be
Yeah.
better at their jobs. That there's unfettered movement in that realm. I'm seeing a lot of it, and I think it's exciting. Um, yeah.
You can
Yeah.
also, I mean, it's that space is exciting to me because I spend so much time through recruiting processes, seeing the assessment work that gets done to decide whether somebody should join XYZ company, sort of then getting left in a file cabinet somewhere once they've joined.
Yes. Oh my gosh, don't get
And
me started. Don't get me started.
I think if you have, if you have a machine riding along for that process and in the loop in that process, it also gives you these, talk about a problem to solve lacks, this is a
Yeah.
huge problem. It gives you the ability to much more seamlessly carry forward what you learned in a way that can be helpful to that person once they've started the job.
Yeah. Agreed.
I think one of the things that we all have to continue to believe and hope in this, in whatever the AI future looks like, is that we're not living in a deterministic world where the machine says you can do this or you can't, and it's right, and we just, but in a world where the machine says, well, you could do this better, and here's how I can help you, even, right? So I think, yeah, I would agree. I think that's a really exciting space for us to be thinking about.
And
Yeah.
I also want to add, I think this topic we didn't mention today is that as IO psychologists who specialize in hiring and assessment, we have the burden to prove the legal defensibility of our tools as well. And that's a big part that probably we need another episode to talk about the regulations and the legal side
Yeah.
of assessment tools. And it, again, needs a lot of human input to safeguard that process to make sure that it is fair and also legally defensible for the organizations who are adopting these tools. Very important topic.
Yeah. I think kind of what I would say is kind of leaving you with this would be it really kind of two no regret moves right before we get into compliance and regulatory waters would be definitely automate manual tedious work that your
Mhm.
HR team is doing, right? That's a no regret move. The other no regret move is also, how can AI help be that tutor or the coach in a company setting because you're helping an individual employee or a leader. That's also a no regret move. You can't go wrong in enabling someone, right? They have agency and they can, and so I think those two. I hope that the field advances in those two areas, and that way, even if AI replaces some tasks and jobs, the same AI can help train us for something else, and I think that could be a symbiotic relationship. I'm thinking of Dali, the movie, with all the
Oh
humans
yeah.
out in the pool drinking Coke, and they look like penguins, only the upper body with the drinking the Coke. I hope that's my dream. So, yeah, I guess maybe, what's kind of maybe Meng and Charles, maybe you guys, what's kind of one parting thought for each of you? I know we covered a lot of ground. If you're if an HR executive or a CEO or an employee is listening, what do
Yeah.
you want to leave them with?
Well, I often just say what pops in my mind for the better or worse of that, but I look at it almost like a roller coaster. I think you get in the roller coaster and the bar comes down on the roller coaster and you can't get off, and you go up and you don't exactly know what's going on and you have some thrills and you're scared. I feel like we're on that kind of thing because we're not stopping this. There's no way, and maybe the end game is that we are all enslaved or terminated. I don't know, but we're not stopping what's happening now. So we have to just we have to have good governance. I use the term safe innovation, right? There's all kind of things we can take advantage of, but but don't get the FOMO. Don't feel like you know AI is a solution you have to throw at things. Look at your problems and figure out how we want to solve this problem, and if there's a technology that can help you with that, experiment with it first. Do your due diligence. Really get the right people who are experts in the area to help understand, uh, and just use it as any other tool, carefully, cautiously, and optimistically. That's what I would say.
Great advice.
Yeah, and I also feel that we need the leaders who can really lead in this digital AI powered world and have the growth mindset, have that level of learning agility to enable a organizational environment where people feel safe to experiment on these tools and help bring in these infrastructures to safeguard all the legal issues, data issues that we mentioned for the organization, so the organization can have the privilege of leveraging these tools to create something greater. And actually, before this conversation, Lex and I, we were just chatting and talking about almost 70% of CEOs think they are ready to implement AIs in their organization, but over 70% of employees actually think we are not ready. We don't have the leadership, we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the resources to use AI tools. So you can see this big disparity here as well. So we look forward to more future-oriented, future-thinking leaders in this field as well.
Well said.
Meng and Charles, very lucky to have you here today. Two bona fide experts at the intersection of biopsychology and AI. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you'll join us again sometime in the future, because I think there's lots more we could and hopefully we'll dive into.
Yes,
forward
thanks.
to.
Yeah, anytime. This is great. I could do this all day, but we all have places to go. So,
So to our listeners,
thank you.
thanks for joining.
yes.
Thank you for joining.
Everyone.
Thanks for listening to Welcome to the Machine.
To join the conversation, visit us on welcometothe-machine-ai.com.
Special thanks to Spencer Stuart, the Return on AI Institute, and our fantastic production team, Trey, Jojo, and John, for helping bring WTTM to life.
Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe.
See you next time.